"Spread your legs fast," the lonely cowboy told the virgin giant bride on Christmas Eve. When she did, Christmas Eve arrived quietly on the wide, empty land. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, and cold wind moved across the open fields like a slow warning. The ranch stood alone, far from the town, surrounded by fences, dry trees, and long stretches of frozen ground. Most people were inside warm homes that night, sharing meals and laughter. But out here, there was only silence. The cowboy woke before sunrise, as he always did. His body followed habits formed over many years. He pulled on his worn jacket, tied his boots, and stepped outside. The cold bit his skin, sharp and sudden. He paused for a moment, looking at the land he had worked on for most of his life. It was quiet, too quiet, especially on a night meant for joy. He was a man used to being alone. The ranch had been his father's, and before that his grandfather's. When his parents passed away, the land stayed, but the house grew emptier each year. Friends had moved on. Family visits became rare, then stopped. Holidays were the hardest. Christmas Eve always reminded him of everything he no longer had. He walked toward the barn, checking the animals. The horses stood calmly, their breath visible in the cold air. He spoke softly to them, his voice low and steady. Talking to animals felt easier than talking to people. They didn't ask questions or expect smiles. They simply listened. After finishing his work, he returned to the house. He made simple food, ate alone, and stared at the small Christmas tree in the corner. It had no decorations, only a single light he had turned on out of habit. He didn't remember why he still did that every year. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was just memory. As evening came, the wind grew stronger. Snow began to fall, light at first, then heavier. He listened to the sound of it hitting the windows. Storms were common here, but something about this one felt different. The air felt tense, restless. Then he heard it. A distant sound cut through the wind. At first he thought it was the storm playing tricks on him. But then it came again, a faint noise like someone calling for help. He froze. No one ever came out this way, especially not on Christmas Eve. He grabbed his coat and stepped outside. The wind pushed against him as he followed the sound toward the road that ran past the ranch. Snow was already covering the ground, making it hard to see. Near the old gate, he spotted a large shape beside the road. As he moved closer, he realized it was a person. A very tall young woman stood there, holding onto a broken-down vehicle. Her coat was thin, and her hands were shaking from the cold. She looked frightened, lost, and completely out of place. He approached carefully, keeping his voice calm. He asked if she was hurt. She shook her head but couldn't speak right away. Her teeth were chattering and her eyes were wide with fear. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and uncertain. She said her car had stopped working, and she didn't know where she was. He noticed how tall she was, taller than anyone he had ever met. Her size seemed to make her feel awkward, like she was trying to shrink herself even though she couldn't. She kept her eyes low, avoiding his gaze. He told her she couldn't stay outside in this weather. The storm was getting worse, and the temperature was dropping fast. He offered her shelter at the ranch until morning. She hesitated. He could see the fear in her face, not just of the storm, but of trusting a stranger. He understood that fear well. After a long moment, she nodded. The walk back to the house was slow. The snow made it difficult, and she struggled to keep her balance. He stayed close, guiding her carefully. She apologized several times, saying she wasn't used to walking on uneven ground. He told her it was fine. His voice was firm but kind. Inside the house, warmth wrapped around them. She let out a small breath of relief as the cold left her body. He gave her a blanket and told her to sit near the fire. She thanked him quietly. As she warmed up, he noticed more details. Her hands were rough in some places, soft in others. Her clothes looked new, like she hadn't worn them much. There was a nervousness about her, like she had spent her life following rules made by others. He offered her hot tea. She held the cup carefully, as if afraid of spilling it. When she drank, her hands finally stopped shaking. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the wind howled. Eventually, she spoke. She explained that she was newly married. The word sounded heavy when she said it. The marriage had been arranged by her family. She was traveling to meet her husband's relatives for the holidays when the storm caught her on the road. She admitted she had never traveled alone before. He listened without interrupting. He could hear the loneliness in her voice, even though she didn't say the word. He recognized it because he had lived with it for years. She asked him about the ranch. He told her simple things, how long his family had lived there, how he managed it alone now. He didn't talk about his past much, but something about her made it easier to speak. She listened closely, like every word mattered. As the night grew deeper, the storm showed no sign of stopping. Snow piled up against the windows. The road would be blocked until morning at least. He showed her the guest room. It was small but clean. He apologized for its simplicity. She said it was more than enough. Her voice held genuine gratitude. Before she closed the door, she turned and thanked him again. Her eyes were softer now, less afraid. When he returned to the living room, he sat by the fire alone. The house felt different with another person inside. Not louder, just warmer, fuller. He stared at the empty space across from him, thinking about how unexpected the night had become. Christmas Eve had always been a reminder of what he lacked, but now something had changed. Outside, the storm continued, but inside the ranch, two lonely lives had crossed paths. Neither of them knew it yet, but that night would mark the beginning of something neither had planned, a moment that would quietly reshape their understanding of trust, courage, and connection. And as the fire burned low, the cowboy realized that for the first time in many years, Christmas Eve no longer felt completely empty. Morning did not come quickly. The storm stayed strong through the night, shaking the windows and covering the ranch in thick white snow. The cowboy slept lightly, waking often to the sound of wind pushing against the walls. Each time he opened his eyes, he remembered that he was not alone in the house. That thought felt strange but comforting. When the sky finally began to turn pale, he got up quietly. He did not want to wake his guest too early. He moved through the house, started the fire again, and put water on to heat. Outside, everything was covered in snow. The fences had disappeared under white hills and the road was completely blocked. There would be no travel today. He made simple breakfast and set an extra plate on the table. It felt like an old habit, one he had not used in years. When he heard soft footsteps, he turned and saw her standing in the doorway. Her hair was loose now, and she looked smaller somehow, less guarded than the night before. She greeted him politely and apologized for any trouble she had caused. He told her there was no trouble at all. He could see she was still nervous, unsure of how to act in a place so unfamiliar. They ate in quiet at first. The silence was not uncomfortable, just careful. She ate slowly, like someone who had been taught to never take more than needed. He noticed small things, the way she sat straight, the way she kept her hands folded when she was not using them. It was clear she had grown up being watched closely. After breakfast, she offered to help with chores. He hesitated, then agreed. He showed her how to feed the animals and warned her about the icy ground. She followed his instructions carefully, trying hard not to make mistakes. Once, she nearly slipped, and he reached out quickly to steady her. She froze for a second, then relaxed when she realized he meant no harm. She thanked him again, her voice soft. Moments like that showed how easily she startled, as if she was used to being corrected or blamed. As they worked, she began to talk more. She told him about her life before the marriage. Her family had been strict, always concerned about how others saw them. Because of her height and strength, they had tried to make her quiet, gentle, and invisible. She was taught to avoid attention, to never speak loudly, and to always obey. The marriage had been arranged quickly. She had been told it was for her own good, that it would give her security. She did not say she was unhappy, but the way her eyes dropped when she spoke told the truth. She had not yet learned what her new life would be like, only that it would be decided by others. The cowboy listened as they walked back toward the barn. He felt anger rise quietly inside him, not loud or sharp, but steady. He had lived his life free, making his own choices, even if that freedom came with loneliness. Hearing her story made him realize how different their worlds had been. Inside the barn, the air was warmer. The horses shifted in their stalls, and one of them snorted loudly, making her jump. He smiled gently and explained that the horse was just curious. Slowly, she reached out and touched the animal's neck. Her face softened, and for a brief moment she smiled without fear. That smile stayed with him. Later, they returned to the house. The storm still ruled the land. There was nothing to do but wait. He suggested reading or resting. She chose to sit near the window, watching the snow fall. She said it was beautiful, even though it had frightened her the night before. As hours passed, they spoke more easily. They shared simple stories, his childhood on the ranch, her memories of school and long days indoors. She admitted she often felt like she did not belong anywhere, too big to disappear, too quiet to be noticed. He told her that the land had once made him feel the same way, like it demanded strength but offered little comfort in return. The afternoon light faded early. The house grew dim and he lit the lamps. She looked tired, not just in body but in spirit. He asked if she wanted to rest. She shook her head and said she was afraid of being alone with her thoughts. He understood that fear. He told her she could stay by the fire as long as she wished. At one point, she asked him why he lived so far from everyone. The question caught him off guard. He thought for a moment before answering. He said that after losing people he loved, the quiet felt safer. Out here, no one expected anything from him. She nodded slowly. That sounds peaceful, she said, but also very lonely. Her honesty surprised him. Most people avoided speaking truths like that. He did not deny it. Instead, he admitted that some nights were harder than others. As evening came, the storm finally began to weaken. The wind softened and the snow slowed. Still, the roads remained blocked. She would have to stay another night. She looked worried when she realized this. Not because of him, but because she feared being a burden. He reassured her again. He told her that helping someone was not a burden. They made dinner together. She laughed once when she dropped a spoon, quickly covering her mouth as if laughter was something she needed to hide. He told her it was okay to laugh. She looked at him like she was unsure whether to believe that. After dinner, they sat by the fire again. The warmth filled the room, easing the long day. The silence between them was different now. It felt shared, not empty. She spoke quietly about her future. She wondered aloud if she would ever feel strong enough to choose her own path. He told her strength was not always loud. Sometimes it was simply standing when everything told you to stay still. Her eyes filled slightly, but she did not cry. That night, as they prepared to sleep, both felt the shift. They were still strangers, but no longer distant. Trust had begun to form, slowly and carefully, like the snow melting under gentle light. Outside, Christmas night deepened. Inside the ranch house, two people carried less weight than they had the day before, even if they did not yet realize how much that mattered. The third day began with a strange stillness. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind a quiet so deep it felt unreal. The land outside the ranch was covered in white, shining softly under a pale winter sun. For a moment, it looked peaceful, almost gentle. But the cowboy knew better. After a storm like that, danger often hid beneath calm surfaces. He woke early again, pulled on his coat, and stepped outside to check the animals. The cold was sharp but clean. Snow crunched under his boots as he moved toward the barn. Everything looked fine at first. The fences were bent in places but still standing. He made a note to fix them later. Inside the barn, the horses shifted and greeted him with familiar sounds. He moved from stall to stall, checking feed and water. Then he noticed something was wrong. One of the younger horses was restless, moving in quick, uneven steps. Its breathing was heavy and its eyes were wide with fear. The cowboy frowned. This horse was usually calm. He reached out slowly, speaking in a steady voice, trying not to startle it, but the animal pulled back, stamping hard against the ground. Snow had blown into the barn during the storm, making the floor slick. A wrong move could cause injury. He knew he needed help. He turned toward the house and called out. A moment later, she appeared at the barn door, bundled in a thick coat, her breath visible in the cold air. She looked surprised by his urgency but came forward without hesitation. He explained quickly that the horse was frightened and standing in a dangerous position. He needed her help to guide it out of the stall and into a safer space. She listened closely, nodding as he spoke. Her face showed worry but also determination. As they moved closer to the horse, it suddenly panicked. It shifted its weight too fast, nearly losing balance. The cowboy reacted at once. His voice became firm, loud enough to cut through the chaos. He gave her clear, urgent instructions on where to stand and how to position herself so she would not get hurt. There was no time to soften his words. For a brief second, she froze. His tone startled her, bringing back old fears of being corrected or blamed. But then she looked at the horse, saw the danger, and made a choice. She trusted him. She moved exactly where he told her to, quickly and carefully. The horse calmed slightly, responding to their combined presence. Slowly, step by step, they guided it out of the stall. The cowboy kept his focus sharp, watching every movement, ready to act if anything went wrong. Finally, the horse settled, breathing slowing, muscles relaxing. The danger passed as suddenly as it had come. The cowboy let out a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He turned to her, his expression changing at once. The urgency faded, replaced by concern. He asked if she was all right. She nodded, though her hands were shaking. "I'm sorry if I sounded harsh," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to scare you." She looked at him for a moment, then shook her head. "You were protecting me," she replied. "I understood." That answer stayed with him. They stepped outside the barn together, the cold air cooling the tension between them. She leaned lightly against a fence, taking slow breaths. He stood nearby, giving her space but staying close enough in case she needed support. After a while, she spoke. She admitted that trusting someone so quickly felt new and frightening. All her life, instructions had come with judgment. This time felt different. His urgency had been about safety, not control. He nodded. He told her that animals, storms, and land did not wait for comfort. Sometimes, acting fast was the only way to protect what mattered. She smiled faintly. "I think I learned something today," she said. They walked back to the house together. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the snow. The ranch felt alive again, no longer frozen by the storm. Inside, the warmth welcomed them back. As they drank hot tea by the fire, the moment in the barn lingered in the air. Something had shifted. She sat differently now, more grounded. Her shoulders were straighter. There was a quiet confidence in her movements that had not been there before. She spoke about how she had always been told to stay still, to wait for permission. Acting quickly, trusting her own body and judgment felt powerful, scary but powerful. The cowboy listened, feeling a deep respect grow. He realized that strength did not always come from experience. Sometimes it came from courage in the moment. Later that day, they worked together again, repairing small damages from the storm. He showed her how to handle tools safely. She learned fast, asking questions without fear of sounding foolish. When she made a mistake, she corrected it calmly instead of apologizing repeatedly. He noticed this change and felt quietly proud, though he did not say it aloud. As evening approached, the sky turned soft shades of pink and gold. The roads were still blocked, but it was clear they would soon be cleared. Their time together was moving toward an end. They made dinner in comfortable silence. Afterward, they sat by the fire one last time. The flames reflected in the window, dancing like memories being formed. She thanked him, not just for shelter but for treating her like someone capable. Her voice was steady when she spoke. He told her she had always been capable, she just hadn't been given the chance to see it. That night, as they prepared to rest, both knew that something important had happened. Not something loud or dramatic, but something real. A moment of urgency had become a turning point. Outside, the snow rested quietly on the land. Inside, two lives had shifted direction, guided by trust, courage, and a choice made in the middle of uncertainty. The next morning felt different from all the others. The air inside the house was calm, warm, and quiet in a comforting way. The storm was truly gone now. Sunlight entered through the windows and rested softly on the wooden floor. Outside, the land looked wide and open again, as if it had taken a deep breath after holding itself tight for days. She woke early and sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment. Her mind was full, but not heavy. For the first time in a long while, her thoughts were not pushing her down. She remembered the moment in the barn, the way she had moved without fear, the way she had trusted herself. That memory stayed with her like a small light. When she stepped into the living room, she found the cowboy already awake, repairing a small tear in one of his gloves. He looked up and greeted her with a gentle smile. There was no rush in his movements, no worry in his face, just quiet steadiness. They shared breakfast again, but this time the silence felt easy. She asked questions freely now, about the land, the animals, the seasons. He answered with patience, sometimes smiling at how quickly she learned. He noticed that she no longer kept her eyes lowered all the time. She met his gaze when she spoke. After breakfast, they went outside together. The snow had begun to melt slightly, revealing dark earth beneath. He showed her how to clear a path safely and how to check the fence lines for damage. She listened, tried, and improved with each task. Her movements were more confident now, less careful in a fearful way, more careful in a thoughtful way. At one point, she stopped and looked across the open land. The space stretched far in every direction. "It's so open," she said quietly. "I've never been anywhere like this." He told her that open spaces could feel overwhelming at first, but over time, they taught you how to breathe again. She nodded, as if she understood something deeper than the words. As the day passed, they talked more about life beyond the ranch. She spoke honestly about her future, about the expectations waiting for her. She admitted she did not know what kind of life she wanted yet, only that she wanted to feel real in it, not hidden. He did not give advice. He only listened. That alone felt powerful to her. In the afternoon, they sat on the porch with warm drinks, watching the sky slowly change. The road was visible now, still quiet but no longer blocked. She knew she would leave soon. The thought made her chest tight, but she did not feel afraid. She thanked him again, this time with steady eyes and a calm voice. She told him that before coming here, she had thought strength meant staying quiet and not causing trouble. Now she knew strength could also mean speaking, choosing, and trusting herself. He told her that people often learned the wrong lessons when they were young, and it took courage to unlearn them. As the sun dipped lower, a vehicle appeared in the distance. Help had finally arrived to check the roads and assist stranded travelers. The moment felt sudden, even though they both knew it would come. She gathered her belongings slowly. When she stood at the door, ready to leave, she paused. The house behind her felt different now, filled with memories made in only a few days. She turned to him and said she would never forget this Christmas, not because of the storm, but because it was the first time she felt trusted. He watched as she walked away toward the waiting vehicle. She stood taller now, her steps firm and sure. When she looked back one last time, she smiled, not a small, nervous smile, but a real one. The cowboy stood there long after she was gone. The house felt quiet again, but not empty. Something remained, something warm and steady. He returned inside and sat by the window, watching the light fade from the snow. He understood now that even brief connections could leave lasting marks, that sometimes helping someone else stand could remind you how to stand yourself. Outside, the land rested peacefully. Inside, the memory of trust lingered, strong and clear, promising that change did not always come loudly, but when it did, it stayed. Days passed after she left, but the ranch did not return to how it had been before. The quiet was still there, the wide land still stretched in every direction, yet something had changed inside the cowboy. He noticed it in small moments, when he woke in the morning, when he fed the animals, when he sat by the fire at night. The silence no longer felt heavy. It felt open. He continued his daily routine, fixing fences, caring for the horses, clearing the last signs of the storm. Winter moved slowly across the land. The nights were long and the air stayed cold, but he did not mind it as much as he once had. His thoughts often returned to that Christmas, not in a painful way, but in a thoughtful one. He remembered her arrival in the storm, frightened and unsure. He remembered how carefully she had moved, how small she had tried to make herself despite her height. And he remembered how she had changed, step by step, learning to trust herself. Those memories stayed with him, quiet but strong. One evening, while repairing a gate, he paused and looked at the open road. For years, he had avoided thinking about what lay beyond the ranch. The land had been his world, his shield, but now he wondered if isolation had become a habit rather than a need. The thought did not scare him. It felt honest. Far away, she was also adjusting to life after the storm. Returning to her world had not been easy. The noise, the expectations, the careful rules all felt louder now, but something inside her was different. She noticed it the first time she spoke her mind without apologizing. She noticed it when she stood straight instead of shrinking. The confidence she found on the ranch did not fade, it stayed. People around her noticed the change too. They said she looked calmer, steadier. Some were surprised. Some were unsure what to make of it. But she no longer felt the need to explain herself. She carried the memory of the ranch like a quiet promise. Not a promise to escape, but a promise to live more fully wherever she was. She began making small choices on her own, choosing how to spend her time, what to learn, when to speak. Each choice made the next one easier. Weeks later, a letter arrived at the ranch. It was simple, written carefully. She thanked him again for his kindness and told him she was doing well. She wrote about the snow melting where she lived, about learning new things, about feeling stronger each day. She said that Christmas had changed her, and she hoped he was well too. The cowboy read the letter slowly, then folded it and placed it safely in a drawer. He did not need to read it again to remember its words. Knowing she was finding her way was enough. That night he sat by the fire, thinking about how lives crossed and then moved on. Not every connection was meant to last forever, he realized. Some were meant to teach, to open doors, to leave something behind. That did not make them less meaningful. As spring approached, the land began to change. Snow gave way to soft ground. New grass appeared. The animals grew restless, full of energy. The ranch felt alive again. One morning, as sunlight filled the valley, the cowboy made a decision. He would not leave the ranch behind, but he would no longer hide within it. He began visiting town more often, speaking with people he had avoided for years. It felt awkward at first, but not impossible. He found that connection did not weaken him. It strengthened him. Far away, she stood at a window, watching the world move. She knew her path would not always be easy. There would be moments of doubt, moments when old fears tried to return. But she also knew now that she could face them. She had done it once. She could do it again. That Christmas Eve, under a harsh storm and unexpected fear, two lonely lives had crossed. They did not promise each other anything. They did not change each other's futures directly, yet both walked away different from before. Sometimes the greatest gifts were not wrapped or planned. Sometimes they arrived in moments of urgency, in quiet trust, in being seen for who you truly were. And long after the snow had melted, both carried the same truth with them. One night of kindness and courage could echo through a lifetime.